Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome back to another Legends of Runeterra deck tech. Time to bring you another deck tech. It will actually not contain any new cards from Monuments of Power, but I think the deck is worth talking about again and has sort of seen a resurgence, especially now with the release of the new set because of its positioning and already to an extent before. And it's one of my favorites. It's going to be Discard Aggro. I've been doing really well with it back in the day before it was cool. But yeah, it got some neat updates in the meantime, and it's kind of like back at a point where I think it's one of the top aggro decks in the game and worth updating and discussing because it seems like a really well positioned deck right now. But before we dive right in, you know the drill. Hit the subscribe button down below if you haven't yet to not miss out on future content and help the channel grow. Alright, let's take a look. Okay, so there are a couple of things to talk about here. So first I want to talk a bit about the units and the structure. So the core direction of the deck is actually still very similar to my old one, if you have seen that, but there's still a couple of things to talk about and a bunch of changes and updates and so on. So first of all, usually the deck runs 2 1-drops. Like one that every list basically runs is Zonite Urchin. Pretty much not debatable since they got buffed. Zonite Urchin is really good. Go and turn 1 Urchin into Jury to draw a card for free and attack for 3 is really powerful. Similarly, solid things go for Flame Chompers and Vision, although they are less powerful in that regard. So that's the 1-1-drop, and then some versions actually don't run another 1-drop and just run like 2 to 3 Poro Cannons. Usually if they don't run another 1-drop, I think it's 3. But most lists run another 1-drop. The options usually are Astute Academic, Draven's Biggest Fan, and Legion Saboteur. Not a big fan of Draven's Biggest Fan, no pun intended. Just an underwhelming card. If you already have a Draven, it's basically just the worst of the cards, and I don't even always want a Draven on top of my deck when I play my 1-drop, so I've never been a big fan of that card, but could be wrong, could be that I underestimated a bit too much, and reliably having Draven on turn 3 is worth it enough, but all in all, I feel like the card is a bit too underpowered. Then we have Legion Saboteur. That's a high power aggressive 1-drop, but the deck isn't that burn heavy, so I feel like the unit doesn't do that much, and the difference between 1 and 2 health is pretty big in the game. There's a lot of 1 attack units and 1 damage things that matter, where Academic sort of really shines. Also, Academic has the high roll potential with Rummage and with Jinx triggers and with Experimenters to even grow past the size of a 1-drop and be sort of past the turn you play it, be sort of closer to a pre-nerf Legion rearguard than any of these other mediocre 1-drops. If you're playing a more burn heavy direction with Mystic Shots and maybe Boom Crew Rookie, then Saboteur becomes a bit more appealing, I think. But right now I rather just play the 2 health unit, even though actually on turn 1 she is kind of weak if you have attack token because she only attacks for 1, where Saboteur attacks for 3 and Biggest Fan attacks for 2. But I felt like since the deck is a bit different than something like Pirate Aggro, which is much more burn heavy and every damage counts, in this deck it's a bit more about board presence and overwhelming the opponent, and you often win by excess damage and not as much by closely barely getting them. So I feel like the value of these things are diminished, and it only matters if it's your only turn 1 play and if you have a tech token. So I'm still a fan of Astute Academic, but both of these options are fine options that other people are playing that aren't horrible, but I feel like they're just notably worse than Academic because the second health point just makes the card so much more robust. Then we usually see 3 to 6 2-drops. I think 3 House Spiders are kind of non-negotiable. I have seen some lists that have only 2 or something like that. which is weird. I think the card just plays way too well with Vision, since most lists by now have come around to the crowd favorite that I in the past have been running when everybody else was like running 0 crowd favorite in the discard decks that they played. They weren't very popular, but when you saw them, they didn't have crowd favorite. I got the tech from Josh Utter-Layton back then, was initially skeptical because it seemed like a lot of 4-drops, but the card was really good. It since got nerfed a bit. While the nerf is annoying and certainly notable, it's not like it breaks the card. The card's still pretty good. Even though it scales worse, and like when things are not going that well, it's worse than before, but when things are going well, the difference between, say, a 7-6 and a 7-7 is actually not that big. When it's smaller, it's more notable. But yeah, if you play crowd favorite and with Vision, I think that House Spider is kind of like non-negotiable. It's just too good of a fit, and it's overall just already a very solid card on its own. And when you have all these ways to make it matter more, it just becomes like a premium 2-drop. And some people either don't run an additional 2-drop, or what you sometimes see is Boom Kuruki. And there's like, there have been lists that kind of have faded out where they don't run any 2-drops other than Arena Bookie. Not a big fan. It's basically not a body. It just kind of sits around and cycles stuff, and I feel like it doesn't do that much. But yeah, those lists I think usually run like Arena Bookie and like Mystic Shot over Battlecaster and House Spider, so to speak, and try to sort of play a weirdly more sort of value game, which does kind of lean out of some of the strengths of the deck, and they often don't run crowd favorite either. But yeah, Battlecaster is another card that my old list already had when nobody else was playing it, since it got buffed. But my old list had 3 House Spiders, 3 Boom Kuruki, because Rookie wasn't nerfed yet, it was a 1-4, so it was a must play, and then I had like 2 Battlecasters in addition. But since Rookie has been nerfed, it's notably less appealing in the deck. It's still fine, and I considered it, and it's still possible that Rookie could be a bit more robust than Battlecaster, since Battlecaster plays into stuff like Avalanche pretty heavily, while Rookie allows you to develop a 2-drop that doesn't get Avalanche. Like you can go 1-drop into Rookie and then turn 3 play a Draven, and suddenly Avalanche looks kind of poor, and you're still doing a lot of damage. Also, Rookie is nice against something like Wording Stone that otherwise blocks your entire 2-drop, and there they just kind of have to take the damage. And it would obviously lend itself better to leaning more into like the burn potential of the deck. But currently I've been pretty happy with Battlecaster. It plays well with House Spider, plays well with Urchin Jury Rig or Urchin Flame Trumpers turn 1, so even on turn 2 now there is decent potential. It also plays pretty well with the Poro Cannon 1-drops, so there's just a bunch of solid options here, but I could totally see trying Rookie again over Battlecaster, especially if you're seeing a lot of Avalanche decks and want to like be able to position yourself better on average against that card the way you curve out, without like basically being forced to, if you play your Draven on turn 3, they just Avalanche away everything else, so you usually have to open attack on 3 without playing your Draven, because it's too risky to play Draven and then lose everything but your Draven to Avalanche, especially if you had a good opening with like I don't know, Zonoid Urchin, Jury Rig, and a 2-drop, stuff like that. And we have 3 Draven. Not much to discuss here, just a mainstay in the deck. It's a great threat, like it's really good at attacking in the deck. The opponent mostly can only jump block it with most decks in most situations, making it really annoying. It also helps with tempo and emptying your hand and adds trick potential, making combat harder for your opponent, making it easier for your Flame Trumpers to kill stuff, and so on and so forth. The primary line is obviously turn 3 Draven with like the Spinning Axe discarding Vision to buff your entire team, blowing the opponent out really hard. Then crowd favorite, I think at least 2 I'm very happy with. The third one I'm not 100% sure, and I could totally see the third one being sort of a flex slot if you would like another Rummage or another Poro Cannon, for example. I will get into that later when I discuss the spells. But yeah, basically 2 I'm very happy with. The third, I've been fairly happy with 2, but is a card that I could see debating over alternative options. And 3 Jinx, also not really much to say here. Powerhouse, can win the game on its own, on her own, unanswered, just a really powerful card. And then we have Augmented Experimenter. In the past, including myself, people have only been playing 2 of these, but I feel like now, with having more ways to sort of get rid of it, with Rummage and Poro Cannon, and more often needing to discard a card that is not a free discard, the downside of drawing multiple experimenters is a bit lower than in the past, and I also felt like the card is just so powerful and one of your best top decks in some games, and it sometimes lets you grind out games that you otherwise couldn't win, where you get like 2 experimenters and stuff, like 1 turn 6 and then you draw into another one and drop 1, say turn 8. Has been pretty impressive, so I currently like just having the full 3, and if I draw redundant copies or they're too slow, I can just discard them into one of the other cards, like Get Excited, Rummage, stuff like that. And I've seen more and more people go back to 3 for similar reasons, so I've been pretty happy with that. And maybe there could be an argument made that you want like another Rummage or Poro Cannon, so like 5 total of those with the 3 experimenters over the third crowd favorite, for example. Now talking about the spells, Poro Cannon can be really nice. It's pretty good with Vision and Battlecaster, and some decks just can't block Elusive, so it's a great way to get damage in and finish off the game or get them in burn range. But it's also a bad top deck, and sometimes you just don't have anything you want to discard to it, and then it's a blank card in your hand. So it can be awkward. So 2 might be better than 3, but I could see turning the third crowd favorite into a third Poro Cannon or Rummage for that matter. Rig, not much explanation needed. Same with Flame Chompers. You just automatically want 3 of these. They're great in the deck. Rummage is a similar thing. Like, Rummage is in a way worse than Poro Cannon, since it is active card disadvantage. Like, if you discard 2 cards, you invest Rummage and the 2 cards you discard to get 2 cards back, so you're down a card. But Rummage is very good at generating tempo, like discarding a Flame Chompers, and a Vision for 1 mana at burst speed is great, and turning them into real cards. They also, once you discard a Draven X, you are at least breaking even, because you discard a real card and a free card in the X and invest a Rummage, so you end up with a 2 for 2. And once you discard 2 Draven X's or like discard a Flame Chompers or something, you're really getting value. Also is a great way to like prematurely level your Jinx. Sometimes on turn 4 with a spell mana you can drop a Jinx, Rummage with your last 3 cards, like Rummage and the 2 other ones, and level your Jinx then and there, also turning her, protecting her potentially from 3 damage stuff. So it's pretty good for that, but in multiples it's awkward. It's kind of a bad top deck. It's kind of a bad draw later when you only have like 1 card in hand, because then the downside of it is even greater. So now with also Poro Cannon as a discard outlet, I've been pretty happy with 2 and feel like 3 is a bit awkward. So I would be inclined to rather run a third Poro Cannon than a third Rummage probably, but I could be wrong on that. Some people have different opinions on that, but that's kind of my reasoning here and my current stance. Then we have 3 Get Excited. It's a card that I've always been like a bit on the fence about in the deck. It's obviously like a solid card. It's reach, it's fairly flexible removal. The downside is not that big in the deck. It can sometimes even actively help to level your Jinx, so that's nice. But I could totally see trying something like Sump Dredger instead of this again, being a more unit focused board present thing, because Sump Dredger is a more powerful card in a way, because instead of discarding a card, you cycle a card, so it also gets you deeper in your deck. It's another threat that has 3 health, so it doesn't die to Avalanche on turn 3, so you can easier develop stuff into Avalanche. Just has a couple of like nice benefits going for it. It's just a very solid card since it got buffed. And then 3 vision, I think, are absolutely mandatory. I've seen lists that only run 2 vision, and I think that's kind of crazy. Card's just way too good, and you also have enough cards where you need to discard cards that getting like marginal value even from a vision on only like 1 or 2 units is better than discarding a real card. So yeah, big fan of 3 visions. I think people that run less than 3 visions are kind of crazy, and I don't get it. But yeah, this is the list. No real room for Mystic Shot in the way I approach this right now. And yeah, deck has been feeling pretty good. I've been doing some climbing with it to Diamond 4. Like I played a couple of decks, and one of the decks that I played was this one, and it felt pretty good, did pretty well. Also makes sense, it's pretty well positioned, it's fairly good against Lee Zed, it seems good against like Tahm-Kench Soraka stuff, and just overall a pretty high power, high nut draw potential deck that can just really like run over even unfavorable matchups sometimes. And yeah, seems like a well-positioned deck worth trying. And there are also people that already got a master on the first or second day with this deck for that reason as well. So people seem to be more and more aware of its quality and positioning, and they also face it more on ladder lately. It also has been doing well in terms of win rate before the new expansion dropped, if you remember my last metagame breakdown. Alright, so yeah, that's it for the deck list and my reasoning for the card choices. Basically the most flexible slots, probably the one crowd favorite, maybe the second experimenter, and Get Excited could be turned into like a dredger if you want to lean more into units and out of spells. But yeah, that's the deck list, and as usual, gonna hop into some games. Not Master yet, but I'm Diamond 4, and climb pretty fast and pretty smoothly to Diamond 4 from Platinum 4 in like no time. I think I made it with like 20 games from Platinum 2 to like mid Diamond 4 or something. So yeah, I'll see you in a moment with the games. Stay tuned.